The Unione Corse is a Corsican mafia criminal organization operating primarily out of Corsica and Marseille, France. Members of this organization, along with various other crime families, maintain the French connection, a heroin trade monopoly between France and the United States from 1930 to 1970. The symbol of the Unione Corse is the same as the symbol for Corsica, the Moor, or Moor's head, a depiction of a black human head with a rag tied around the forehead, on a white field. A member of this society may wear it as a pendant or watch fob. Heroin trade. The Unione Corse started to get involved in the drug trade in Southeast Asia in the 1930s and by the 1940s was heavily involved. In 1954, after the French retreat from Indochina, Corsican mobsters flew drugs from Laos into South Vietnam by plane. The operations were collectively known as air opium. Between the 1930s and 1970s, they smuggled heroin refined in Marseille to New York. The Unione Corse's involvement in the heroin trade was what became known as the infamous French Connection. Ultimately, international cooperation between law enforcement agencies dismantled the operation. Relationship with the French government. The Unione Corse has enjoyed some degree of influence within French government and law enforcement. During World War II, the Unione Corse had a schism with some favoring Vichy and the Germans. The Free French sympathizers within the milieu pacified and rendered harmless several prominent German sympathizers in Marseille on behalf of the French resistance. In 1948, the Unione Corse was enlisted to act as strikebreakers in Marseille. The society provided assistance in the form of longshoremen to unload ships and to persuade unions to return to work. Some Unione Corse members hold elected office. There are others in the Gendarmerie Nationale, Douanes France and SDECE. It is believed that this close, mutually beneficial relationship has prompted the government of France to somewhat de-emphasize law enforcement in regards to this group, with political corruption, white-collar crime and tax avoidance, tax evasion and control of football clubs, casino, hotel, nightclub management being on the business side of the spectrum of the criminal activities. Numerous forms of racketeering, aside from the above-mentioned drug trafficking and money laundering, extortion, prostitution, robbery and contract killing have been suggested. Characteristic example typical of the Unione Corse's secrecy would be the case of a man known as Antoine Ranieri. On the 12th of June 1962, Ranieri, who identified as an art broker, arrived in the city of New York by air from Paris, France, carrying $247,000 in hard currency, ostensibly to purchase an object of art from an American identified as Mr. Anderson. He arrived at a club to complete the purchase, but the seller was a no-show. Ranieri decided to visit a friend, Gannett, in Asheville, North Carolina, before he left for Europe. For the duration of his visit, the money was stored in a jointly held safety deposit box at Wachovia Bank in Asheville, per the recommendation of Gannett. On the 18th of June, Ranieri left Gannett, flew to Chicago, and there boarded an aircraft which was to fly to Zurich via Montreal. The flight was rerouted to New York, where Ranieri was arrested and questioned. At its conclusion, Ranieri was served with a notice to appear before a federal grand jury. At the proceedings, he refused to identify the American from whom he intended to purchase art, and refused to identify a Swiss acquaintance in temporary possession of the money prior to Ranieri's entry into the U.S., on grounds of a code of business ethics and the desire not to violate confidential relationships. Ranieri declined to rely upon the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. The prosecution alleged that unnamed agents of the Bureau of Narcotics believe these funds represent the proceeds from the sale of narcotics in the United States by Ranieri. He was sentenced to incarceration for a term of 6 months for contempt of court, after which he was flown back to France. During this time, no link was, or could be, established between his money and undocumented trade in narcotics. The money was paid back with interest. Notable members like the mafia. The Unione Corse is also split into separate crime families. The Unione Corse is alleged to be far more secretive and tightly knit than the mafia, and law enforcement have found it hard to extract information from members who follow a code of silence similar to the Sicilian omerta. Family ties create bonds between the members, which are not only stronger but allow protection against outsiders trying to either infiltrate or gather information about any of the members. As of the early 1970s, there were around 15 clans operating in France, the most notorious being the Francisci, including Marcel Francisci, the Guarini brothers, including Antoine Guarini, the Orsini, and the Venturi including Dominique Venturi, aside from Paul Carbone, Lucien Conian, Lucien Sardi and Paul Mondolani. Notes